Hello everybody, my name is Jackie Geringer McDermott and we're recording live from the English Valley's History Center in North English, Iowa. It is June 14th, 2025. This diary was written by my great-great-aunt, Mary Elizabeth Claypool Wade, who was known as Libby Wade. She was 75 years old in May of 1950. Here's a picture of Aunt Lib holding her great-granddaughter, Barbara Wade. We will read and talk about a few days in the diary and then switch to happenings around the History Center and feature stories. May 23rd, 1950. A nice warm morning. I believe the most like spring that we have had. We started to Ottumwa at 10 a.m. Frida and Claudia and Jimmy, Melva and Barbara and Mildred Cox and Jenny and I. Mildred took her boy Teddy as far as her mother's and left him there. Frida's children stayed with her sister while we were in town. The doctor was Dr. Hansen that fitted my glasses. He seems to know his work. They cost $16.50 for their lenses and $10 for the new frames and 50 cents for repair of the old ones I'm wearing. Along on the trip were the wife of grandson Walter or Bud Wade, Frida Wade, and her two oldest little children, Claudia and Jimmy, and the wife of grandson Harold or Stub Wade, Melva, who I haven't located a picture of yet, and her little daughter, Barbara, and a friend from town, Mildred Cox, and her son, Teddy, who stayed with his grandmother while the women went to shop, and also Lib's daughter-in-law, Jenny. She's right there. The wife of her oldest son, Wayne or Perky Wade. Granddaughter-in-law Frida was from the Hedrick area, so she left her children with her sister while they continued on to Ottumwa. It is quite an ordeal to look at so many letters, etc. in the test, but I got along fairly well. My foot hurt so too. I wore new stiff shoes, and it was more added on to enough. Mildred drove the car. Frida was guide after we got into the city. She is acquainted down there. I had Jenny get me 2 pairs of pillow slips, some washcloths and dishcloths. Also, I got some fresh baked cookies and some seed cups, Cuttlebone, and tonic for the birds. I have a memory of Mildred Cox driving me in a car too as a teenager. She was a good driver. She took me to work at the Middle America restaurant on 3rd shift when she and Kay Reed worked at the Landmark restaurant nearby on Interstate 80. Evidently, Lib has pet birds in the house as she needed supplies for them. Marion Long Wade had her little girl's tonsils out today. She stayed at Wayne's till evening. Lottie Bucher was not home and I wasn't. Evelyn was down at Wayne's. Warren and Lena were here this evening. They were up to see Phyllis. She is getting along good. Was to be up this evening. Roy is terribly bad. Steve Carter is to be there tonight. Bertha's birthday, her 50th. Lib's great niece, Marion Long Wade, the daughter of her niece, Louise Claypool Long, needed a place to land after her daughter's surgery. So since Great Aunt Lib was not home, and Lottie Bucher, who was also a relative, was not home, she went down to Perky and Jenny's house. Their daughter, Evelyn Kurtz, was there with her 7-year-old daughter, Suzanne, who also had her tonsils out and is staying at her grandparents' house. So Marion Long waited there too. Lib's second son, Warren, he's right there, and his wife, Lena, had been to Cedar Rapids to see their 18-year-old daughter, Phyllis, she's right there, who had had an appendectomy recently and is about ready to be on her feet again. In those days, they did not get you up immediately after surgery. Roy Wallace, who's right here in this picture, is very ill. I suppose they meant that Steve Carter, who's right there, will be there to sit with Stella tonight so that she can get some rest and if she needs any help. Libby's niece, the daughter of her brother Benton, was my paternal grandmother, Bertha Claypool Geringer. She was born May 23rd, 1900. So she was 50 years old on May 23rd, 1950. She was born 125 years ago. May 24th, 1950. Another nice morning. I feel pretty good. Was awfully tired last night, but slept well and won't have much to do today. Maud's brother and his wife left yesterday after visiting Maud and Ray for a week or more. Their home is Vancouver, Washington. I sent a card to Phyllis. Mrs. Huff took it to the P.O. She thought she could come over this evening to set out my gladiolus bulbs. I spoke to Larry King about planting some dahlias. He said he would this evening. He borrowed Russell's fishing rod for the afternoon. He and some other boys were playing ball, and he broke a window for Mary Newhouse. Had it fixed yesterday. Maud Foster Claypool will soon be 53 years old. She is Lib's friend, neighbor, and married her nephew, Ray Claypool. Maud was the mother of Amy Hervey from South English, so the grandmother to the Hervey children. Maud's brother, Charles Foster, and his wife have been in town to visit. Alice Huff was an elderly neighbor lady when I lived on the hill in the south part of town in the 1960s. But in 1950, she was 67 years old and in good enough shape to help plant flowers for Lib. Larry King is a 14-year-old neighbor kid, and she also wants him to help plant. Mrs. Agnew was in a while. I offered her some dahlias. We'll give them to her when she comes by. Evelyn came and got some today, too. They are going home this evening. Suzanne feels pretty well. She ate mashed potatoes today. Kathy is beginning to break out with chicken pox, one thing after another. Would never have a better time for them, though. Mary, or Minnie, Agnew, is Libby's 62-year-old neighbor to the east, who lives with her 43-year-old daughter, Ann Agnew. They still lived there when I walked to school that way in the early 1960s. Mrs. Agnew was the mother of 14 children and the grandmother of John O'Rourke and his brothers from North English, among others, as she was the mother of Teresa Agnew O'Rourke. Kathy Kurtz, Lib's 2-year-old great-granddaughter, is starting to break out with chickenpox now. Mary R. came in the p.m., had been to town. Hattie went to the doctor, was here a while. Mary Lovina Wade Regseger, right there in the picture, was 72 years old and Libby's friend, neighbor, and egg lady. They had known each other when Libby lived in the Green Valley area east of town when she was first married. Mary also raises a large garden where Libby gets lots of produce. Hattie Newberry Killian is Libby's 59-year-old neighbor and lodge friend. Her mother, Clara Newberry, has passed away now. Hattie lives on Boland Avenue across from the Catholic Church, and she takes in boarders. Libby's buddy, Verdi Mahana McKinstry, lives there now, and also a male boarder, and her nephew, Levon Bursler, who's right here in this picture, and his wife, Leona, right there, was his new bride, and she was 18 years old, and she was my mom's best friend from the class of 1949, and that's my mom in the front of this picture. This is from the centennial. They all had on their centennial dresses in 1954. Elsie Miller was also here. She visited her Aunt Mary Bear last Sunday. Mary was 92 on Monday and lives at Brighton with her sister, Anna Sibb. Mrs. Huff planted my glads and some flower seeds. Hazel got the remainder of the dahlias and some flower seeds in the evening. Elsie Miller was a neighbor from the country. She was the mother of Robert Miller, who married Kay Thurman, and Dick Miller from east of town. Hazel Wade Cobb is Libby's young married granddaughter. It looks rainy. I'm glad I have some things planted. Charles Cox was here looking for a man that was acting improper at his place this p.m. Russell went to church. Fred Axmere was buried today. Charles Cox, or Beanie Cox, as everyone called him, is 30 years old and owns a produce store uptown on the east side of Main Street, not far from Lib's house. His daughter, Julie Cox Stainerson, is one of my faithful listeners. Russell is Lib's 42-year-old son, and he owns the house and lives with Libby. Frederick Stevens Axmere, who was the grandfather of Steve Axmere from North English. Fred was from Keswick. He was a teacher and superintendent, a landowner, and a prominent farmer. He was only 65 years old and had been in a bad car wreck the year before. And with our resources we have around here, this is the Keswick Centennial Book, of which we have a copy. And up here in this corner, on the top of this side, is Fred Axmere. May 25th, 1950. Cloudy and cooler. We had rain last night. I don't know how much. I defrosted the fridge this morning. Don't feel very well. Maybe I missed my glasses. These do fairly good, but they make me sort of woozy. Jenny sent up a soup bone. I sent her some asparagus. It grows so fast. Should be picked about every day. It is a lot cooler today after 2 or 3 days of warm weather. Miss Wilkins came in this p.m. She seems nice to visit with. She told me more about Tom Mall than what has been known here. They were to take him to Marengo to a boarding house, but the room was not ready for a few days, and Hilda wanted him away, as she expected to leave for a while. So he was taken to the county home until this other place was ready. He had a slight stroke there and was taken to Watts Hospital in Marengo and then to Mount Pleasant. She said the ones in charge at Mount Pleasant got the boys' address from them, so they were called. Tom Mall that Libby was talking about was the brother of her brother-in-law, John Josiah or Jack Mall, and the brother of her sister-in-law, Daisy Mall Claypool, so she wanted to learn more about Tom Mall's final days. Tom Mall was the grandfather of Jean Mall and Larry Mall and Bonnie Schwab from Watchir. Hazel was in a little while later in the p.m. She would have liked to see Miss Wilkins about the man over there. Millie was here a while. She said Mrs. Bolts was with her mother, so she felt like she could stop in a while. Mary and Flossie were in town today. I didn't see them. A new tank of gas today. They took both tanks. Millie Swope Knipfer on the top is 67 years old and widowed and lives with her widowed mother, 98-year-old Laura Swope, who was Lib's first teacher at Yankee Point School out in the country northeast of town many years ago. Elizabeth Geiger Bolts, or Lizzie Bolts, is their 89-year-old neighbor who stayed with Mrs. Swope so that Millie could leave and go down to Lib's for a little bit. Mary Williams and Flossie West, this is Flossie, are the granddaughters of Lib's cousin Wallace Claypool. Their parents are Millard Claypool and his wife Molly Cheney Claypool. The English Valley History Center promotes the rich history of the communities within the river valleys of the North, Middle, and South English rivers. It encompasses an area roughly served by the English Valley School District, from Deep River to near Parnell, and from Watchir to Kinross. This includes the communities of Millersburg, North English, Webster, and South English. Please send donations to the English Valley History Center, P.O. Box 70, North English, Iowa, 52316. I found something interesting when I was reading the newspapers this week. This is about how mail started getting sent to Sigourney each morning and to Cedar Rapids each evening in 1950. Before that, all the mail had gone by train starting in 1884. Of course, in those days, they actually sorted the local mail at the local post office. So if you had a letter for North English, they just put it directly in each person's box. They didn't send it all the way to Cedar Rapids to sort like they do now. Thursday, May 11th, 1950, to get mail by star route. The Indians couldn't stop the progress of the railroads in frontier days. It took the white man with cars, trucks, and planes to get the job done. About 66 years ago, the first Milwaukee passenger and mail train rolled into North English. A large crowd was on hand and there was great rejoicing. Next Saturday evening, the mail train will roll into town and only a half a dozen people will see it. First to go was the horse and buggy, now the railroads. What next? Postmaster George M. Smith received notice Wednesday that the Star Route service will begin next Monday morning, May 15th. Morning mail that is southbound will close at 8:15 a.m. The truck will leave here at 8:35. The northbound mail will close at 4:55 p.m. with the truck leaving here at 5:25. All mail received at the local post office after 8:15 and 4:55 will be sent by the next dispatch. This Star Route will operate between Cedar Rapids and Sigourney. And it still does go to Cedar Rapids every evening. Our acquisition of the week is this Centennial shirt. This Centennial shirt was found in the trunk of Opal McCombs Dennis, my dear friend, when we were on the Opera House board together in Watch here. She was a 1948 graduate of North English High School and an employee on Main Street during the 1954 centennial. It is very small, but so was Opal. The shirt was donated by her daughter, Lori Crum. Today's featured story is about Ralph and Mickie Ballard. This is the big poster board we have on the Ballard family here in the center. You might remember we've shown this before. It talks about Bertha Ballard and her husband John Newton Ballard. Their oldest son in this picture was Ralph Ballard. You might remember from our earlier stories that John Newton Ballard and Bertha Ballard left Iowa in a covered wagon and headed to Oklahoma with the older Ballard parents and then on to New Mexico to find a better life. In Tucumcari, New Mexico, Ralph Ballard was born in 1908. The family later made the long trip back to Iowa in a covered wagon and settled down in Iowa. In 1924, at the age of 44, John Newton Ballard ended his life. Ralph and his brother Floyd then assumed farming responsibilities with their mother to raise the 11 children. Ralph was a hunter and fisherman, a real outdoorsman like many others in the Ballard family. And this picture is on the wall in the back room. And this is Ralph with all of his siblings. And here are some shots from his childhood. Here is Ralph with his little sisters. And here is a funny one where his sister is dressed as a boy and Ralph is dressed as a girl. And here are a couple pictures of when he was older with his siblings. In this one, he's right back here in the corner. And in this one, he's over on this side. In 1932, Ralph married Ida Viola Carter, who was known as Mickie Ballard. Mickie's parents were Lila Hardy and Herbert Benton Carter. Herbert Benton Carter was the father of Mickie and her brother Pat Carter. Herbert Benton Carter died of influenza in 1918, and Lila married S.S. Urbanus Cobb, who had Ray, Aline, Edgar or Ty, and Esther or Shorty Cobb, and later they added Milo and Glenn Cobb to the family. So in this picture, in the front is Mickie Carter, later married to Ralph Ballard, Eileen Cobb, Ray Cobb, Estelle or Shorty Cobb, and in the back are Glenn Cobb, Edgar or Ty Cobb, Milo Cobb, and Pat Carter. So that was all of her siblings. Ralph and Mickie Ballard had a dairy farm where they raised milk cows and farmed row crops. On this farm was a barn with a lower level and a main level where barn dances were held. Ralph and Mickie adopted 2 children, Lindine Ballard from the class of 1963, and Louise Diane Ballard from the class of 1966. And Louise celebrated her birthday each year with her cousin Bobby Cobb, who's right next to her in this picture, the adopted son of Glenn and Hazel Cobb, as they were days apart in age. Their aunt, Nellie Van D. Cobb, the wife of Uncle Milo Cobb, often celebrated with them as she had a December birthday too. Ralph made the trip back to New Mexico to find his birthplace, as is told in the Hinkletown book. Louise told me a fun story about a family trip to Alaska. In 1965, before Louise's senior year in high school, she was dating her future husband, Robert Christensen, and he was stationed in Alaska. Of course, she wanted to go see him, and Ralph said, "As soon as we get the oat crop out of the field, we can go." So they drove to Alaska, taking a 5-gallon can of gas with them and stopping every available time to get gas along the way. Louise remembers that the road was very curvy and it took them 10 days to get to Alaska. The scenery was fantastic. While they were there, Ralph was able to go salmon fishing. After the long 10-day drive home, they arrived just in time for Louise's senior year in school. Ralph and Mickie were members of the North English Methodist Church. Ralph passed away in January of 2000, and Mickie following in 2001. They are buried at the North English Cemetery. Correspondence this week. Marcia Vinson from Lena, Illinois said, "This was just meant to be. Reliving yesteryear. You are doing great." Mark Claypool said, "Jackie, this week was one special history lesson. Picturing in my mind what the Millers and Aunt Lib and family must have been through with the daily activities they all have had. This one was extra special. Thanks again." Helen Kirkpatrick Schwietert from Colesburg, Iowa and Lake Placid, Florida called from her cabin on the Mississippi to tell me the show last week was fantastic. She had not ever heard about life on the farm of her great-grandparents, Noah Samuel and Rosie Schaff Miller. I have a couple more pages that Liesl Miller wrote, and I will read them next week. Cindy Weber said, "Great program as usual. I remember Mom talking about so many of these people." Sharon Wilhite Hagen said, "These are awesome." Susie Allison Lumberg commented about the stories on the pioneers too. There were no shortcuts for those old timers, huh? They had to make and do everything. Mind-boggling. So very, very interesting. Thanks, Jackie. You're amazing. Pam Kavanaugh Shields said, "Such an interesting broadcast. Thank you. I'm sorry to say I will be out of the country on the 26th of July and was looking forward to all the activities in North English, but I'll be at the luncheon later this month." I heard from my distant Claypool cousins who are the children of Laureen Claypool Osweiler. They said, "We've been to Roundhead, Ohio Cemetery where Jacob Claypool and some other Claypools are buried. Jacob was the father of William Glenn Claypool, my ancestor, and your ancestor, Jonathan. There were 2 cemeteries, the old and new cemeteries. Jacob is buried in the old cemetery, and many of these stones are misplaced today. Jacob came from Kentucky to Ohio. Jacob's father was Jesse from Wyoming, Kentucky. His grave is unlocated. My 6th great-grandfather, Claypool, is buried just south of Lost River, West Virginia. And I believe his name was James Claypool. He's also my ancestor. Aunt Lib was so proud of her Claypool heritage, as was my grandmother, Bertha Claypool Geringer, her niece. Others in the family have been able to trace their lineage back and join the Daughters of American Revolution if they so desire. I would also like to mention that the next English Valley Alumni Luncheon at Bryant's in the Williamsburg Mall will be held at 11:30 a.m. on June 30th. Please contact Alice Stramer or Linda Carter for reservations. Our sympathies to the family of Roger Borup from the Kinross class of 1955. I received a nice little package in the mail this week. It was from Jane Hedden from Green Valley, Arizona. She graduated from English Valley High School in the class of 1957, and her father was E. Andrews, the superintendent. She wrote some clever short stories about her memories at North English High School when she was Jane Andrews. I want to read you one of those short stories. And here is the picture. This is the composite. If I can get this in there correctly. Jane is right there. And her father is the superintendent in the middle of the picture. And up here on the top, we also have Jane's diploma. This is the class composite from that year. And while I'm talking about it, I'm going to say, if you have any of those composites, we would like to have them donated to the History Center. We are getting a new case to hold them all in, and it's going to be, that's what these, everyone at EV Books are going to be sold to raise the money to buy that. And we have the list of all the composites we have. We have 22 of them, and there's more than that. And also, if you have any annuals, be sure and donate those also because we can use them. This is Jane's story. Mrs. Hurst's English class. My favorite teacher was definitely not Mrs. Hurst. The teacher who had the most lasting effect on my life, however, was Mrs. Hurst, who taught English. The school years were 1953, 54, 1954, 55, 1955, 1956, and 1956, 57. The place was North English High School in North English, Iowa. Our high school population totaled about 120 students. The class of 1957 had 27 graduates. Our curriculum was limited by our small school size. I took basic classes like algebra, American history, bookkeeping, chemistry, and typing. Because I was a girl, I took home economics. Boys took shop, and had physical education classes with other girls. Most of the teachers taught several different subjects, but Mrs. Hurst only taught English. Every day she was faced with every student enrolled in our small high school, as everyone took English every year, no exceptions. Mrs. Hurst's room was on the first floor of the high school building at the foot of the stairs leading to the second floor. Although I remember it as being large, it was certainly not large by today's schoolroom standards. It was flanked by large sash windows on the east and north, a blackboard that ran the length of the room on the south, and a smaller blackboard behind her desk on the west where the door was located. Wooden chairs with arms for writing and slats underneath where students placed their books were placed neatly in rows. Bookcases crammed with textbooks, novels, and poetry were below the windows. What did we do in English class? I remember the emphasis on grammar, capitalization, punctuation, and spelling. We learned the parts of speech and how to put them together to form sentences, then paragraphs. We spent hours diagramming sentences on those two blackboards. We had contests to see who could diagram the fastest. Even though I was quite good at it, I hated diagramming. I wrote, carefully constructing my paragraphs, and then wrote some more. When I was a senior, I wrote my first research paper. Mrs. Hurst guided me through the process from selection of my topic, parakeets, to compiling footnotes and a bibliography until it was done. Obviously, Mrs. Hurst was a stickler for composition. I wrote a lot, but was extremely limited in my study of literature. I can't remember reading one classic and never developed any appreciation for anything much beyond light novels. When I got to college, I found that the intensive study of grammar, and especially those hours spent diagramming I was forced to do in Mrs. Hurst's English classes, really paid off for me. In my first freshman composition class, many of my fellow students were really struggling with writing. I breezed through the assignments, wondering why they were having such a hard time. Then I realized they didn't have Mrs. Hurst. As time went on, I became more and more aware of the fact that writing was easy for me and that I enjoyed it as well. Thanks to Mrs. Hurst, I am still writing, and once in a while I diagram sentences, if only in my head. We are also interested in learning about historical English Valleys items that you might wish to donate to the History Center. Please contact Dave Jackson, Scott Romine, and any board member to donate. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.